Hello, readers. I'm going to continue with the novel study of The Sign of the Beaver. We're going to pick up with chapter 10. After the reading this chapter, I will read over the questions that go with the quiz time page, which are questions that go with chapters 5 through 10. Chapter 10. He felt weak with relief when next morning Aten walked stiffly into the cabin and sat down at the table. Stumbling over himself, he sat about the lesson. As soon as he could, he picked up Robinson Crusoe. In the night, he had carefully thought out just what he was going to say, if Aten ever gave him another chance. Now, he had to talk fast, because he could see that Aten was set against hearing any more of this book. "Let me go on," he pleaded. "It's different from now on. Friday, that's what Robinson Crusoe named him, doesn't kneel any more. Not slave?" "No," Matt lied. "After that, they get to be, well, companions. They share everything together." Ignoring the suspicion on Aten's face, Matt began hurriedly to read. He was thankful that he knew the book so well that he was able to see when trouble might be coming. One of the first words Crusoe taught his man Friday was the word master. Luckily, he caught that one in time, and it was true. Crusoe and his new companion did go about together, sharing their adventures, only Matt thought it would have been better perhaps if Friday hadn't been quite so thick-headed. After all, there must have been a thing or two about that desert island that a native who had lived there all his life could have taught Robinson Crusoe. When Matt closed the book, Aten nodded. Then, as so many times before, he took Matt by surprise. "You like go fish?" he asked. "I sure would," Matt said gratefully. Stopping to pick up his fish pole from beside the door, he ran to overtake the Indian boy, who strode ahead. He knew his grin was stretching from ear to the other, but he couldn't hide his feelings as Aten did. They walked some distance, Matt managing to keep pace with the Indian's swift stride, determined not to let Aten know that his ankle was aching. They seemed to be following no particular trail. Finally, they came out on a part of the creek that Matt had not seen before. It was shallow here, studded with rocks and pebbles, so that the water rippling over them made little rapids or collected in quiet pools. Here Aten stopped, broke off a sapling, and instead of making a fish pole, drew his knife from his pouch and quickly shaved a sharp point, making a sphere. Then he stepped gently into the stream. Matt stood watching. Aten stood motionless, peering intently into the pool of clear water. All at once he stooped, darted his spear with one quick stroke, and came up with a glittering fish. He studied it for a moment. Too small, he decided. To Matt's astonishment, he spoke to the fish quite solemnly. A few incomprehensible words, then tossed it back into the stream. In a few moments he had speared another, which he judged large enough to keep. "Do same," he ordered now, coming back to the bank. He handed Matt the spear. He would just look ridiculous, Matt knew before he started. He waded in and stood up to his knees, looking down into the sliding water. Presently, a fish darted past. At least he thought it was a fish. It was hard to tell which was shadow and which might be a fish. At any rate, it was gone before he got his spear into the water. Presently he saw another, this one quite different. Definitely a fish. Calmly drifting in the pool, he jabbed at it hopelessly. He was sure his stick actually touched the slippery thing. He lunged at it, lost his footing, and went down with a splash that would scare off any fish for miles around. When he came up dripping, he saw Aten watching him with a horrid grin. Suddenly he felt hot, in spite of the icy water. Why had Aten brought him out here anyway? Had Aten just wanted to show off his own cleverness and to make Matt look more clumsy than ever? Was this Aten's answer, in case Matt had an idea in his head about being a Robinson Crusoe? For a moment, Matt glared back at Aten with a scowl as black as any Indian's. Then he wiped his nose with the back of his hand and sloshed back to the bank. He snatched up his own pole and line. He poked about under the wet leaves and found a good juicy worm and fitted it to his hook. "I'll do it my own way," he said. "I can catch plenty of fish with this, and that's what matters." Aten sat on the bank and watched. To Matt's satisfaction, in no time there was a tug on his line, a strong one. An impressive-looking fish rose up to the surface, thrashing fiercely. Matt gave a jerk, and the line came swinging out of the water, and suddenly that he almost lost his footing again. It was empty. Fish line broke, Etienne observed, as if anyone could see that. Furious at Etienne, at the fish, and at himself, Matt exclaimed that the break, unable to face the Indian. He had lost more than a good fish. His hook had disappeared as well, the only hook he had. Of course, Etienne noticed. Those black eyes never missed anything. Make new hook, he suggested. Without even getting to his feet, he reached out and broke a twig off of a maple sapling. Out came the crooked knife again. In a few strokes, he cut a piece as long as his little finger, carved a groove around the middle, and whittled both ends into sharp points. Now he stepped into the water and tied Matt's line expertly around the groove. Put on 2 worms, he said. Cover up the hook. He didn't offer to find the worms. Matt had lost all interest in fishing. He knew that somehow or another he would just provide more amusement for Etienne, but he couldn't refuse. He didn't have to wait long before another fish caught hold. This time he landed it neatly. Good, said Etienne from the bank. Big. Matt was trying to get it off the line. He swallowed the whole hook, he said. Better white man's hook, Etienne said. Turn around, inside fish, not get away. Back at the bank, Matt slit the fish and extracted the hook and his line. But the thin twig had broken half. Easy, make new hook, Etienne said. Make many hooks. Of course, looking down at the simple thing in his hand, Matt realized that he never again need worry about losing a hook. He could make a new one whenever he happened to be. It was another necessary thing that Etienne had shown him, just as he had made the snare. He wasn't sure why Etienne had bothered, but grudgingly he had to admit that Etienne had proved to him once again that he didn't always have to depend on white men's tools. All at once he was hungry. The sun was straight overhead, and it would be a long tramp back through the woods before he could cook the fish. Now he saw that Etienne had the same thought. The Indian was heaping up a small pile of pine needles and grass. He drew from his musket skin pouch a piece of hard stone with bits of quartz embedded in it. Striking it with his knife, he soon had a spark, which he blew into a flame. I could have done that myself, Matt thought. In fact, he had done it many times, but he had not realized that he could use a common stone as well as his flint. Get fish ready, Etienne ordered now, pointing to the fish on the bank. Matt did not like his masterful tone, but he did as he was told. By the time he had the 2 fish split and gutted and washed in the creek, Etienne had a fire blazing. Matt was curious to see how he would go about the cooking. He watched as Etienne cut 2 short branches, bending them first to make sure they were green. He trimmed and sharpened them rapidly. Then he thrust a pointed end into each fish from head to tail. A small green stick was set crosswise inside the fish to hold the sides apart. He handed 1 stick to Matt and 1 on each side of the fire, and 2 boys squatted and held their sticks to the blaze. From time to time, Etienne fed the fire with dry twigs. When the flesh was crisp and brown, they ate, still silently. Matt licked his fingers. His resentment had vanished along with his hunger. Golly, he said, that was the best fish I ever ate. Good, said Etienne. Across the fire, he looked at Matt, and his eyes gleamed. He was laughing again, but somehow not with scorn. What did you say to that fish when you threw back? Matt was still curious. I say to him not to tell the other fish. Etienne said seriously, not scare away? You actually think a fish could understand? Etienne shrugged. Fish know many things, he replied. Matt sat pondering his strange idea. Well, it seemed to work, he said finally. At least the other fish came along. A wide grin spread slowly across Etienne's face. This was the first time Matt had seen him smile. So, boys and girls, often when we read, we talk about character change. I think this was a great chapter that can support character change. When I first talked about the novel study, one thing, when in the video where it says ways to think about text, we talked about character development. Let me just zoom in real quick here. And just as a reminder, character development. Characters are the ones who move the story along. Okay, first and secondary characters are important. So there's two main characters. The father, Matt's father was mentioned in the very beginning, but throughout the rest of the chapters, like 2 through 10 so far, or 2 through 9, we have had two main characters. We've had Matt and Aten. Okay, and who do you think is the main character, and who do you think is the secondary character? The main character is Matt. This story is focused on him. Okay? It's his father that left. It's him that was left in his cabin for 7 weeks. Okay? The secondary character is Aten. He's the character that supports the story. He's moving the story along. A good example is when Matt hurt his ankle. Okay, well, Aten and his father Aten's father was there to save Matt from the bees. Right? So if Aten wasn't there, the story would have ended. Right? But because the author wrote Aten and his father saving Matt from the bees and helping him with his ankle, he's pushing the story along. Another example, Matt gave Robinson Crusoe to Saskin, which is Aten's father. And if Matt never did that, okay, the father wouldn't have, Aten's father wouldn't have wanted Matt to teach Aten how to read. Okay, so because each lesson Matt has to teach Aten how to read, okay, Aten is moving the story along. Aten shows him how to go fishing. Aten shows him how to set a snare. Okay, so those are all reasons that the secondary character can push the story along. By working to understand the characters, you will better understand the story. Okay, so an example of this is if we work to understand like who Matt is, we can understand the story. Right? So we have to constantly remind ourselves, Matt is, I believe, a 12-year-old boy. He just turned 13. Right? He's left in the wilderness pretty much by himself. Everything he has to do for himself. Chopping of the wood, making of his meals, catching of his food. But we also have to work to understand the mistakes he makes. Right? What were the 2 big mistakes that he made? Well, actually, there's 3 big mistakes he made so far. He left his father's rifle unattended, and Ben stole it. Right? The second mistake he made was not keeping his door barred shut, and a bear came in and kind of ramshacked his house, and tipped over the flour barrel and licked the molasses barrel. And then the third big mistake he made was trying to go after that honeycomb. Right? So, and then we think, well, why did he do those things? We have to work to understand him. Because how old is he? He's 12. You can't blame a 12-year-old for needing to learn kind of these life lessons. And one way to help us is to think fast. Character analysis. Think of Matt's and Aten's thoughts, their sayings, so what they say in the book, okay, their actions, what they do, and their feelings. Okay, so do you think Matt shows lots of feelings so far? I think he does. You try to think about what feelings are Matt showing. Every chapter he seems to be showing some sort of feelings. But even way back when he greeted Ben, I think it was chapter 3, he was trying to be hospitable. He was trying to be welcoming. He was trying to remember what his dad told him. Be respectful, be helpful. Right? And then every chapter that he has to work with a 10. What is the big thing that Matt is really trying to do? And I've noticed it in chapter 8, chapter 9, and chapter 10. He's trying to better understand a 10. Robinson Crusoe is not really looks like a great book for Matt to be sharing with a 10. Robinson Crusoe sounds like he treated the native people of the island he was stranded on kind of not very nice. Kind of maybe treated them like slaves. Or the one person he met, like a slave. Matt's noticing Matt. Matt is noticing that, wow, a 10 must feel very offended by it. How can I change it? What can I say to him to show differently? So that's interesting. So as we move forward, so we notice that there's a character change with Matt. Okay, so as we move forward, I want you to think, is there going to start to be a character change with a 10? And chapter 10, we kind of started to see a little bit of a change. Right? He's kind of smiling at the end of the chapter. Well, what's bringing about that? It might be important to go back and either reread on your own or re-listen to the reading of chapter 10. See if you can pick up on what is the change that a 10 is going through. I'm not going to share that with you quite yet. So let me read over the questions if you need the questions read. Okay. So on the back of this paper, write a one-paragraph summary of the major events that happened in each of the chapters in this section. Then complete the rest of the questions on this page. Actually, writing a one-paragraph summary after each chapter, you should be doing that anyways. And if you're like, well, what should I write in my paragraph? Well, focus on the 5 W's. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. Okay, question 2. What advice does Matt's father give Matt about bees? Now, here's a hint. If you're reading chapters 5 through 10, the questions should go in order. So if you need to look back to the text, which you should, you can go back to to chapter 5, probably for that one. Keep in mind, whenever you're practicing answering questions, okay, whether it's verbally or written, try to stick with our claim, evidence, short answer triangle. Remember, a claim, I'll write that at the top here. A claim is a statement. Can you see that? You want to prove. Okay, so in each of these answers, you're going to make a statement that you want to prove. Okay, and then over here, I'll just write it down here. Your evidence is your text details to support your claim. Okay, so what advice does Matt's father give Matt about bees? Okay, your claim would be Matt's father tells Matt blank about bees. And your evidence would be he said blank, or on page blank in the book it's stated. Okay. Some of these questions might be pretty straightforward. You might not have not meaty enough to have 2 pieces of evidence, but if there is, then go ahead and find that evidence and either verbally say it or write it. Okay, really practice our claim, evidence. Question 3. What food item, let me move this back over. What food item does Matt's mother persuade Matt and his father to take with them on their trip to the Maine territory? There's something his mom knows that Matt loves that he persuades the father to carry it all the way. What quick action by Sakinis. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sure I am. Sakinis. Sakinis. I've been saying Saskins, but I believe it's Sakinis. What quick action by Sakinis plays an instrumental part in Matt's recovery? Okay. What does Sakinis want a 10, or why does Sakinis want a 10 to learn to read? Question 6. How does a 10 feel about his reading lesson with Matt? So there's been, throughout chapters 5 through 10, there's a couple reading lessons. Okay, I think here what they're talking about, kind of like focus on the beginning of the reading lessons. Question 7. Characterize Sakinis in one well-written sentence. Okay, one well-written sentence is kind of like a summary. How would you summarize summary of Sakinis? Characterize Sakinis in one well-written sentence. Characterize, think of character trait. Okay, character trait or traits. Okay. 8. Characterize a 10 in one well-written sentence. Question 9. List 3 things Matt learns from a 10 in these chapters. And 10. On the back of this page, predict the relationship that will develop between Matt and a 10. Support your ideas. That's text details. Okay, and this would be a perfect claim, evidence question. Okay, remember in your booklet, you also have these journal pages. And as I said before, you can answer these in 2 ways. One, you can answer as if you are kind of living in this environment and going through the same storyline, but you can be a little bit more creative and say what you would do in the situations. Or you can answer it as if this is Matt's page. And Matt, and this is kind of like a summary, you can write about Matt's experience, and you're writing as if you're Matt, and this is a first person as if you're Matt, or it can be more creative as if you're in a wilderness situation. Okay? All right, keep on reading.